I hit him before I decided to. My fist connected with Corvin's jaw in the middle of our daughter's naming ceremony, the most sacred day in a wolf child's life. And the sound echoed off every stone wall in that courtyard, like the whole kingdom wanted to hear it twice. He stumbled, didn't fall. So I hit him again. Let me explain what a naming ceremony is. It's the day your pup receives their identity before the pack. Both parents present the child to the elders. You prepare for months. You sew the ceremonial dress by hand. I did, for 3 weeks, in white linen with tiny stitches, because Ren's shoulders are still so small, and I wanted it perfect. You wake before dawn. You braid your daughter's hair while she sits in your lap, asking if the elders will like her. You tell her they'll love her. You believe it. And then your husband walks through the ceremonial gates with another woman, not hiding, not ashamed, walking her in like she'd been invited, like this was her family, like the 4-year-old in the white dress I'd sewn by hand was a detail he'd already moved past. The woman wore green, a nice green, the kind you choose when you want to make an impression. She was young, she was smiling, and she was holding my husband's arm in the exact spot where I'd held it at our own ceremony 6 years ago. I looked at Ren. My daughter was staring at her father, and this stranger with the expression children make when something is wrong, but they don't have the language for it yet. That confused, searching look, mouth open, eyebrows pulling together, trying to find the adult who will explain why the world just tilted. That face, that's what broke me. Not his betrayal, not her green dress. My daughter's face was trying to understand why her father brought a stranger to the most important day of her life. My fist was moving before my next thought arrived, and when it connected, bone against bone, my knuckles splitting open on the jaw of the man who was supposed to be standing beside me, presenting our daughter to the elders, I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years, clarity. They'll tell you I lost control. I didn't. For the first time in 6 years, I found it. The courtyard erupted. Gasps. Someone calling for the guards, an elder shouting my name like a curse. Corvin was on one knee, blood on his lip, looking up at me with the expression of a man who had genuinely never considered that I might hit back. 6 years of marriage, and he still didn't know what I was capable of. That's not love. That's not even attention. That's a man who stopped looking at his wife the day he decided she was furniture. I grabbed his collar. Not to hit him again. I wanted him standing, visible, so every wolf in that courtyard could see exactly what kind of man needed 2 women at his daughter's naming ceremony. You brought her here, I said. Quiet, the dangerous kind. Today. You brought her here today. Corvin wiped blood from his mouth and said, You're embarrassing yourself, Sarah. Myself. I was embarrassing myself, while his mistress stood frozen by the gate in her nice green dress. I hit him a 3rd time. That one I decided. Somewhere behind the noise, I heard Ren crying. That specific cry children make when they're scared, but don't understand what to be scared of. That cry cut through everything. I let go of Corvin, and in the chaos, at the far edge of the courtyard near the stone archway, I saw him, a man, dark hair, fur-collared coat too fine for Greymore, standing completely still while everyone else moved around him like water around a stone. He wasn't horrified. He wasn't entertained. He was watching me the way you watch lightning, not the flash, but the place it strikes. Our eyes met for one breath. My wolf, snarling through my whole body for the past 90 seconds, went silent, like someone pressed a hand over her mouth. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. I had a daughter to reach. The guards pulled me across the courtyard. I passed Wren, standing by the ceremonial platform in her white dress with a smear of Corvin's blood on the hem. I don't know how it got there. Maybe it fell from my hand. Maybe it splashed when he stumbled. But the dress I'd sewn for 3 weeks, tiny stitches, white linen, her shoulders so small, now had her father's blood on it. And nobody was going to remember today as her naming. They were going to remember it as the day her mother lost control in a sacred space. They were wrong about that, but nobody was going to ask me. "Mama," she whispered. I couldn't stop. They were pulling me. "I'll come back," I said. "Count the sleeps." At the archway, the stranger turned to the man beside him and said something I couldn't hear. 5 words that would change everything. Missed because I was watching my daughter's face get smaller. What he said: "She's mine." The Greymore Pack Council convened the next morning. I sat in a stone chamber that smelled like old wax and older men and waited for justice. I was a fool. Elder Hollis presided, 70 years old, gray braids to his waist, the kind of wolf who survived so long by never choosing the side that might lose. He read the charges without looking at me. Public violence against a ranked pack member during a sacred ceremony, an Omega striking a Beta, disruption of a naming right. I waited for the other charges, the ones against Corvin. Desecration of the ceremony, bringing an unrecognized wolf into a sacred space. They never came. "And his charges?" I said. Elder Hollis looked at me the way you look at a dog that barked too loudly. "Marital infidelity is a private matter. Your violence was public. He brought another woman to our daughter's naming, and you struck him in front of the entire pack. Because he brought another woman to our daughter's naming. The council does not adjudicate private marital disputes. He made it public when he walked her through the ceremonial gates." Hollis's jaw tightened. I was supposed to accept. That's what Omegas do in Greymore. You accept, you survive in the margins they leave you. The ruling, temporary loss of custody. Wren goes to Corvin until the council reviews my stability. Removed from the pack residence. Sundown to leave. I packed 1 bag. Wren's baby blanket still smelled like her. A drawing she'd made of us together, where my head was bigger than the house, because children draw the things they love larger than the things they live in. My mother's ring. Wren was at the door. Corvin was nowhere. Probably upstairs, rewriting history. The braid I'd done that morning was still in her hair, falling apart, loose strands everywhere, but holding because I'd braided it tight. She was wearing different clothes. Someone had changed her out of the ceremony dress. But her feet were bare on the cold stone because nobody who changed her thought to check whether a 4-year-old had shoes on. That detail told me everything about the care she'd receive without me. "I'm coming back for you," I said. "Count the sleeps." "How many sleeps?" "Not enough for you to forget my face." She grabbed my sleeve, small fingers, a grip that didn't understand why it had to let go. I memorized the weight of it, the exact pressure. Because I didn't know how many sleeps it would be, and I needed something to carry that wasn't grief. I walked out of Greymore with 1 bag, split knuckles, and the sound of my daughter not crying, which was worse. She was trying to be brave because she thought that's what I needed. 4 years old and already performing strength for someone else. She learned that from watching me. 3 days, a boarder inn called the Lame Fox. One room, a bed that sagged in the middle like it had given up on posture, the same way I'd given up on justice. I spent those days doing two things, rationing coins and reading every piece of Graymore pack law I could find. If the council used the law against me, I'd use the law to get Wren back. On the third evening, someone knocked. The man from the courtyard. Dark hair, fur collar, expensive boots that had no business in this hallway. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought, late 20s. A scar on his jaw, eyes that were paying too much attention. Cale Dorn, Alpha King of Thornwall. Alpha King, at a border inn, 3 days after watching me dismantle my husband's face. If you're here to offer sympathy, I said, I can't afford to repay it. If you're here for something else, say it plainly. The Graymore Council's ruling was unjust. I can offer you legal standing in my territory, formal residency, the right to petition for your daughter from a position of authority rather than as a banished Omega with no pack. Why? He paused. I watched something shift behind his eyes, a prepared speech collapsing because I'd asked the one question he didn't have a polished answer for. My wolf recognized you at the ceremony. The hallway went very quiet. You felt the mate bond, I said, while I was beating my husband. Yes. And you thought the appropriate response was to show up at my door offering legal favors. I thought the appropriate response was honesty. I looked at this man. This Alpha King, in his fine coat, was standing in a hallway that smelled like damp wood and someone else's cooking. And I knew, the way you know weather is turning before the sky changes, he was telling the truth. The mate bond doesn't negotiate. It arrives like a verdict. The last man who said I was his, I told him, is the reason I'm in this inn. Whatever your wolf felt, I am not available to be claimed. I am trying to get my daughter back. That's the only thing I'm doing. I'm not here to claim you. I'm here to give you standing to claim what's yours. He placed a document on the hallway table. Didn't step inside. Didn't linger. Read it alone, he said. Decide alone. I'm not part of the decision. I read it that night, twice. Clean. No hidden clauses. No marriage requirements. He was giving me a position to fight from and asking for nothing. That's what scared me. Men who ask for nothing are either saints or patient wolves. I accepted Thornwall residency the way you accept medicine. Not because it tastes good, but because the alternative is worse. The cottage was stone. 2 rooms, a garden, a hearth. The farthest house from Cale's keep that still counted as his land. I chose it specifically. I wanted standing, not proximity. I filed a petition to Greymoor's council, return of custody on the grounds that Corvin provoked the incident by desecrating a sacred ceremony. His counter-petition arrived 3 days later. My hands shook while reading it. He argued I'd abandoned territory voluntarily, that my residence in a foreign alpha's territory proved compromised judgment, that I was unfit. He was using Cale against me, using the help I'd accepted as proof I couldn't be trusted. I didn't go to Cale. If I won with his power, I'd never know if I could have won with mine. Wren needed a mother who knew her own strength. I went to Thornwall's archive instead. 3 days in a cold stone room reading law scrolls so old the ink had faded brown. My back ached. My eyes burned. I ate bread at the reading table because I couldn't afford to stop. On the 3rd day, I found it. A precedent. 200 years old. An Omega named Delia Voss, who struck her mate during a sacred rite after he violated its sanctity. The ruling. Violence born of sacred defense is not aggression. It is correction. The sanctity of the right was breached by the mate. The Omega is acquitted. I copied it word for word. My hand was shaking. The hearing. Gray morning. Corvin sat across from me, looking composed and exactly like a man who expected to win because he always had. I presented the precedent. His advocate argued it was outdated. I stood. If this precedent is outdated, then so are the laws that established this council's authority. Those are older. Should we discard those too? Silence. The kind where everyone recalculates. Ruling. Custody restored. Corvin retains supervised visitation. Formally censured for desecrating a naming ceremony. Permanent record. Wren came home that evening. She ran across the muddy courtyard. Bare feet again. Because whoever had been watching her still hadn't figured out the shoe situation. And I dropped to my knees on the cobblestones and caught her so hard we nearly tipped over. She smelled like wood smoke and the wrong soap. Someone else's soap. 12 days of another person's routine layered over my daughter, like a coat that didn't fit. How many sleeps? I whispered. She held up both hands, then 2 more fingers. 12, I said. You didn't lose count. You said you'd come back. That sentence, from a 4-year-old who had every reason to stop believing what adults told her and chose to believe me anyway. I held her until my knees went numb, and I didn't care because numb knees are nothing. Having your daughter back is everything. Weeks passed. The cottage stopped feeling temporary. I hung Wren's drawings on the wall, learned which floorboard creaked, where the morning light hit the kitchen table, that the garden soil was good for rosemary but resentful toward basil. Kale kept his distance. No visits, no gifts, no howling at my border like some alphas do in courting. The only sign he existed was firewood. Every morning, stacked by the door, split cleanly. I never saw who delivered it. I chose not to investigate because some questions are better left as kindnesses. One morning, I found Wren at the garden wall talking to someone. The alpha king of Thornwall crouched in dirt, listening to my daughter explain the life cycle of a beetle she'd found under a rock. Genuinely listening, asking follow-up questions with the seriousness of a man receiving diplomatic briefing. He saw me and stood immediately, mud on his knees. I apologize. She called me over from the path. He knows about beetles, Wren said. I looked at this man. Mud on his royal trousers because a 4-year-old summoned him to look at an insect. Who gave me legal standing without asking for anything? Who said, "She's mine" to his beta and spent months proving he didn't mean it the way the last man did? Stay for tea, I said. Not warmth. Permission. He stayed. We talked about firewood, winter preparations, Wren's habit of collecting rocks and assigning them personalities. Small things, the kind that don't mean anything until they mean everything. Tea became regular. Wren started leaving a rock on the garden wall on days she wanted him to visit. He never missed one. One evening, after Wren fell asleep, "You felt the mate bond the day I was hitting someone." "Yes." "That doesn't concern you?" He thought about it, not a rehearsed answer. Actually, considering my question, instead of waiting for his turn to speak. My wolf chose a woman defending her daughter's sacred day. The fist was incidental. The reason wasn't. That landed somewhere I wasn't ready for. Months passed. Wren's beetle died. She held a funeral in the garden, dug a small hole, placed Gerald on a leaf, covered him with dirt, and 3 of her best rocks as headstones. Kale attended with full solemnity. I watched from the kitchen window as an alpha king stood with his hands clasped, while a 4-year-old delivered a eulogy for an insect that included the line, He was small, but he tried very hard, and I thought, this is either the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen or the most important. After the funeral, Wren asked Kale to help her find a new beetle. He spent 40 minutes on his hands and knees turning over rocks. He didn't find one. Wren patted his arm and said, "It's okay. Gerald was special." He looked at me over Wren's head with an expression that said, "I am in very serious trouble here." And I looked back with one that said, "Yes, you are." Later that night, much later, I walked to his keep, alone, knocked on his door at an hour when knocking means something. He opened it, said nothing, waited. "I'm not here because of the bond," I said. "I know. I'm here because you crouched in dirt to hear my daughter talk about beetles. Because you attended a funeral for an insect named Gerald. Because you never once told me what to do. I'm choosing you, not because a bond told me to, because I watched who you are when you thought it wouldn't earn you anything." He exhaled, slow, long, like he'd been holding it since the courtyard. "I was starting to think you'd never knock," he said quietly. "I was starting to think I wouldn't either." Wren called him the Beetle Man for 3 months before switching to his name. Then one morning, unprompted, standing in the kitchen while he made porridge, badly, always badly, the man governs a territory and cannot operate a stove. She looked up and said, "Are you staying?" He looked at me. I looked at him. "Yes," he said. "Good," Wren said. Gerald would have wanted that. He moved to the cottage. The Alpha King of Thornwall governed from a 2-room stone house on the edge of his own land, because that's where his family lived. His advisors were horrified. He didn't care. Some men build lives around power. He built his around a garden wall, a child's rock collection, and a woman who took 4 months to let him through the door. Corvin petitioned for unsupervised visitation once. The council reviewed his censure record and denied it. He didn't petition again. Marin, the woman in the green dress, sent a letter. One line. "I didn't know what that day was. I'm sorry." I wrote back, "I know. Live well." Because hating her required energy I'd rather spend on my daughter. And because she walked into that courtyard believing a liar, the same way I once had. The green dress wasn't cruel. It was preparation for something she thought was real. The mate mark appeared on its own. I woke one morning with a faint silver line curving along my collarbone. No ceremony, no ritual, no man pressing his mouth to my neck. The bond wrote itself when I was ready. Not on his timeline, not on the bond's timeline. Mine. Wren traced it with her finger while I braided her hair. "What's that?" "Something that chose me." She considered this. "Like Gerald chose our garden?" I laughed. Real laughter. The kind that starts deep and rises without permission and sounds like something you forgot you were capable of. Exactly like that. They called me violent, unstable, unfit. They took my daughter because I hit a man who brought his mistress to our child's naming ceremony, and every person who watched, every elder, every neighbor, every wolf who saw what he did and punished what I did, told me the system was fair. It wasn't. It was just old. I didn't need a king to save me. I needed to stand to save myself. Kyle gave me that. What I did with it was mine. If you're in a place right now where the system is telling you you're wrong for reacting to something that was done to you, hold on. Not because someone's coming, because the precedent exists. Someone, somewhere, fought the same fight. Find it, use it, win. This has been Forbidden Luna Stories. Subscribe if this one found you when you needed it. Next story. a wolf who was sold to an alpha as payment for her father's debt. She was supposed to be currency. She became the most powerful Luna in 3 territories. I'll see you there.